Anyway, Scott Rowe was able to negotiate a case where the guy received the death penalty. There were certain errors made at trial. Thoreau made a deal with the state's attorney, and they dropped the guy sentenced from death to a term of years in prison. 50 years less. He'd served 60 years. They got credit for that. It was 44 years. And anyway, he would get off in a reasonable amount of time. So we actually bring new hope to all these people. We're their only hope, in a sense. And our office is funded by the state of Illinois, and that is a plus. In some other states, they don't really have as state offices funded as well as Illinois. One of the reasons I think that 13 people were found innocent of death row is because we have such a program here. Many of those people came through our office. The lawyers who handled the cases were lawyers that we had hired on contract. And by the way, when I say hired, we pay them $50 an hour, which given the going rate for civil lawyers in Chicago is ludicrous.
Roughly?
Well, lawyers charge sometimes anywhere from $300, $400, or $500 an hour. Low amounts are $150 an hour. And we pay $50 for what I would consider very complex litigation. In order to do this work, you have to know federal law, state law, civil law, criminal law, and the peculiarities of death penalty jurisprudence, which is a world unto itself.
What's the significance of the moratorium?
Well, I think Governor Ryan, under the law, besides these 9 steps that I showed you, there's a 10th step, which is not judicial. It's called clemency, and that's a governor's hearing, and the governor makes the final decision. And in effect, he's throwing the switch. And Governor Ryan felt, based on what he'd heard about the other 13 that were not guilty, that he did not want to throw any more switches until he was convinced that proper procedures are being used in our criminal justice system in Illinois. Police aren't beating people into confessions, that lawyers are competent on either side, the defendants are getting themselves examined for DNA, or other forensic testing. And I think he showed a lot of courage in doing it, but I saw him give a speech. He was generally agonizing over the fact that he'd be the one saying kill him. And what if the person was innocent? As somebody said, we had hearings this morning, posthumously it's hard to bring somebody back. Just death is death, that's it, very final.
How many people are there on death row in?
About 160 in Illinois, 3,000 or so, 3,500 nationwide.
And out of that 160, how many are women?
4.
And do you have any sense of roughly what the numbers break down in terms of ethnicity and race?
Yeah, I think 100 black and 60 white.
No Latino? Or Asian?
Few. They're significant Latino. But I don't remember the numbers right now. I had them at one time.
Can you roughly articulate both sides of the perspective that say why we need to have the death penalty in this country, and the opposite side that says why we don't?
Well, I think that there are 2 major reasons why people want the death penalty. One is for deterrence value. For example, a man rapes a woman. And then is the question, should I kill her or not? Why should he kill her? Well, if he kills her, she won't be around to identify him. So they say, let's give him a little deterrent to killing her. The deterrent will be, if you just rape her, you'll get 30 years. If you kill her, in addition, you'll get the death penalty. Because murder in the course of rape is death penalty eligible in this state. So their view is, we want to give a little deterrence to these people. It's true, some people are crazy, and they are not deterred by such a thing. But some other people might rationally figure, in a robbery, you rob a grocer, you rob a currency exchange. Well, you want to leave witnesses to identify you, you want to kill them. Again, the robbery will get you 10 years to jail. I'm just taking an arbitrary number. You kill them, you're talking about the life death or life imprisonment. And so the death penalty is a very good deterrent in the views of some people. There are studies that show it doesn't deter, but that doesn't cut any ice with people who believe that. They don't worry about some studies. They know, they figure that that robber will think twice before he does the killing. Or killing a policeman.
Do you agree with that?
Do I?
That a person in the act of committing a crime goes through a conscious thought process at the heat of the moment that decides I will or will do something based on what I do or don't know the repercussions or punishment will be?
I think in some cases they think it out, like in a kidnapping, or they think at some point. I mean, a lot of people would say, well, I'll be in for robbery, no murder. Now, is it actually statistically a valid deterrent? I don't know about that. Studies have shown that they can't establish that. But I'm giving you the view of those people who believe that they should have the death penalty. The other reason is simply vengeance. Somebody this morning at our hearings that we just had about the death penalty talked about a case in which a child was killed and very badly battered and sexually assaulted, even though it's a baby. I mean, it's terrible. And in the old days, I'm talking about prior to the social contract, before we were living in organized societies, the only way to handle that would be for the family to go out and take revenge against the perpetrator or his or her family. The state is supposed to substitute for that. And that's why one of the purposes of punishment is actually revenge. It may not be a valid purpose, but the state says, don't take it on your own hands, we will perform that function for you. This guy killed, we're going to kill him, and you'll know that he didn't get away scot-free. So those are the basic reasons why people want the death penalty: deterrence and revenge. On the other side, I think, I don't know that I can really give you all the arguments, but one argument certainly is that you teach people not to kill, and then if the state kills, how does that square with that? For example, the analogy would be if you raise a child and you have two children, an older child and a younger child, and the older child beats up the younger child, and you say, you shouldn't hit him. Do not hit Johnny. And then as the father, you take your hand and you whack the older kid across the face. But what have you really taught him? It's simply this: the biggest one gets the hitting. Don't hit Johnny, but he hits you. So the view is, we talk about the sanctity of human life. We want to urge people not to kill, even in a robbery or rape or burglary. And then the state deliberately commits murder by scheduling the execution and deliberately killing somebody. And some religious people feel only God has that power. Some other humanitarian people feel it shouldn't be done. Also the fact that we have an amendment called the Eighth Amendment that talks about how we should not have cruel and unusual punishment. Clearly, at the time of the Constitution's passage, the death penalty was included as something that's okay. But today, almost every civilized industrial nation in the West has abolished capital punishment. France, England, Bosnia, all of South Africa, all these countries have abolished capital punishment except us. We're there with some other countries that we're not really allies with, who have capital punishment.
What does that say about our nation at this point in history?
Well, I think our nation is going through cataclysmic change. On the one hand, most Americans view themselves as the most moral people in the world. We have democracy, we have a criminal justice system that gives the defendant the right to the presumption of innocence. We provide counsel for the accused if he can't afford it. And other systems don't have those basic rights. On the other hand, that's not the view of the rest of the world. There are a number of international treaties. One, for example, says, don't kill children. We refuse to sign that part of the treaty. Because in some states we kill children under the age of 18.
Which states?
There's a whole list, I don't know which ones right now. Illinois doesn't, and New York doesn't. A number of states kill people under 18.
How many states have the death penalty at this point?
38.
Which are the states that don't?
I can't tell you offhand. I can't tell you offhand, but I think Alaska, Hawaii, District of Columbia, a whole bunch of states. This is an exchange student. Her name is Flora Vigru. This is our videographer, and his name is Wen, right?
Yeah.
And he is preparing something for a university,
Yep.
or a library, or an archive in Chicago. Misfit Group goes to the Sorbonne in Paris. You may want to get her on camera for a minute. She goes to the Sorbonne. Yeah, just smile. She is a senior law student at the Sorbonne in Paris, and she's studying our system here this summer. And her particular field of interest is international law and whether America adheres to its treaties. And the chief treaty she's working on is called the Vienna Convention. And this is a treaty that we signed, actually. And here's what it says. That if an American citizen is arrested abroad, he has the right to contact the consulate. Okay? The flip side of that is that if a foreign national is arrested here, he or she should have the right to contact their consulates. That is observed in the breach here in America. Most police chiefs don't bother with it, and they don't advise the defendant that they have a right to contact their consulates. So there's a famous case in the court where the guy didn't get his rights, he got the death penalty. And so we're trying to raise this issue now in a couple of cases where we feel that had the defendant contacted his consulate, they would have advised him about getting a lawyer, they would have advised him to plead guilty maybe, they would have advised him on how to have better mitigating witnesses, etc. So that's what she's working on.
What is the future of the death penalty in Illinois as well as in the country as you see it?
I think it'll be good for a while.
What does that mean?
I don't think they can abolish it that easily. I think that still a lot of people are in favor of it. Even if it's, but I think a lot of people who are in favor of it are now in favor of restricting it. What I see what should be done is to chip away at it. Like, mentally retarded shouldn't be executed. Children should not be executed. People who go to the Sorbonne, no. People who are, let's say, somebody's mentally ill, they should not be executed. Then, for example, the state's attorneys have a right, the state's attorneys have a duty in this country to turn over evidence to the accused if it would be helpful to the accused. I would say if somebody doesn't, if a state's attorney doesn't do that, that they should be blocked from, they should have a new trial immediately, and they should not be able to ask for the death penalty if they cheat. I don't know about that, but at least they have to have a new trial. Some people are saying that why have the death penalty if you can give life imprisonment without parole and restitution? And that way some money is paid back to the family and the person works. I don't know. But I mean, a lot of people are hedging their bets. Some people suggest that only multiple murderers should get the death penalty, like Richard Speck that I mentioned, or Gacy, who had 33 deaths. They think that the death penalty should be reserved for multiple killers, 5 and up, or some arbitrary figure. So I think that the death penalty will stay, but I think that's going to be modified and it's going to be watched, and I think there'll be much more supervision by the federal courts and by the Illinois Supreme Court on several issues. One, the effectiveness of counsel. 2, the fairness of the prosecutor. 3, the fairness of the police and their procedures. And 4, scientific evidence. All those will bear on whether or not somebody gets a death penalty. So it's an exciting time because this is a period of transition, and Chicago's system is we're trying in this state of Illinois to be in the forefront of this fight to be fair in death penalty work. Hello? 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 Okay, yeah. Right. Okay, see you tomorrow.
How does the overall state of the death penalty argument, both for and against it, speak to larger ideas about the state of our criminal justice system nationally?
The interesting thing is that DNA testing, which has now progressed, has shown that a number of people were wrongfully convicted. Not just death penalty people, other people too. I think the figures are something like 69 people have been proven innocent by DNA. If that's the case, then it shows other problems in the system. Convictions, let's say, on eyewitness identification, which people suggest can be influenced by the police. Not purposely, even subconsciously. For example, routinely, there'll be a lineup. Suppose you're placed in the lineup and it's a rape. Would you believe you have one chance in six to be picked out? They say to the woman, which one of these people in the lineup did it? They usually say, this one. Sometimes lawyers are picked out of as lineups because they come into the police station. Somebody says, will you be in a lineup? The lawyer says, sure. What have I got to worry about? And they get picked out, sure as shooting. And then obviously they're cleared. They have nothing to do with the crime. They weren't there. They have an alibi. But the point is, it's easy to make a mistake. If you think about it, think about going to a dining room or a nightclub or a restaurant and try to remember who your waitress is. Very often, some people are good at it. Some, to me, I never remember who my waitress is. They're all wearing certain uniforms. Maybe looks very similar in some ways. So now, in a crime, it happens very fast. You get a quick look at the person. So eyewitness identification is maybe in question as a basis for conviction. Probably I think the Bible says you need 2 eyewitnesses before you kill anybody. Here we don't do that, we do it with 1. Secondly, confessions are now being viewed as an unreliable source. Why? Because, for example, in one case that we had in Illinois, the police made up the confession. They just made it up. The defendant never said it, but they have police reports. They know facts about the case. Or they'll say things, let's say, they'll say, like they know the facts of the case. They'll say things to the defendant like, and so, what'd you do to her red, then you took off her red panties? Huh? I guess so. Then they say, how else would he know about red panties? Unless he was the real killer. How else? Because the police tell him that's how. So, and then they talked today about the fact that in Chicago we had some police who actually beat people. By beatings, they used the Tucker telephone. You know what that is? Well, it's a device where they attach wires to one's groin and then turn on the juice and give them electric shocks and a very sensitive part of the body. Including they did one of those things to a 14-year-old kid who was petrified. And who knows what irreparable harm was suffered. Another trick of this group was to put a plastic bag over your head. Now they tighten the strings. Now you can't breathe. Then they take off the bag. And they say, now never put it on again, and this time we're not taking it off unless you confess. Me, I'd confess to anything rather than be suffocated to death. Aaron Patterson, who's one of the defendants, was smart enough to write on, take a paper clip and write on the bench of the police station where he was being interrogated that they were torturing him. And so later when they say, well, he never complained, well, there it was at the very moment. Well, I mean, what was his choice? I mean, he wasn't about to be killed or tortured to death. So, or damaged, so he just figured to confess, and he made a note here on this is coerced. And that case is litigating, it's up before the Illinois Supreme Court now.
So, currently in the summer of 2000 in Chicago, all over the papers, there's a lot of coverage about gang violence and other crime pervasive in the city, murders and other things. As someone involved in the world of criminal justice, what do you think are the real keys to reducing crime in our country?
Well, I think that poverty and lack of education breeds crime, lack of opportunity. For example, some people view narcotics as a business. So they go to jail and they come out, they have no education, no degree, no job. They get a job from the local narcotics seller who has them work as runners or as deliverers. And they pay them so much per week. There's a lot of money in narcotics. So that brings in a lot of people into crime. I think if there were opportunities for advancement, for jobs, if there's education, I think if certain conditions were improved in the neighborhoods, I think those would contribute toward the reduction of crime. For example, if your classroom has 20 students, that's one thing. Suppose this classroom has 60 students for one teacher. A lot less can get done. A lot less personal attention can take place. So I think poverty and lack of education, lack of job opportunities are breeding grounds for crime. And one of the other things they did, and there's some studies on this, is that they built huge centers for lower-income housing. Robert Taylor Homes and some other ones, huge skyscrapers with poverty family after poverty family. So I used to be a probation officer at juvenile court. I used to cover one of those districts. One of those projects would be 50 kids on the sidewalk. I grew up in Chicago. I had 3 or 4 friends to play with. These guys have 50. Well, you have 50 guys playing together, or 50 guys and girls. Somehow they form into clubs on the sidewalk. I grew up in Chicago. I had 3 or 4 friends to play with. These guys have 50. Well, you have 50 guys playing together, or 50 guys and girls. Somehow they form into clubs, and then police call them gangs. And sometimes they do very nice things, and sometimes they don't. They rob, steal. But I mean, the gang formation seems to occur naturally as a result of the congested housing. Now they're tearing down those big buildings, reallocating people, so they don't have huge complexes, which turned out to be, contrary to anybody's thoughts, really breeding grounds for juvenile delinquency and juvenile delinquent gangs.
What do you think are the most serious or most pressing issues facing Chicago at this point in history?
Well, we're trying to maintain our status as a worldwide city. We view ourselves as a world city. We are the 2nd or 3rd largest city in America. I think LA beat us by 100,000 last census. But we view ourselves still as the 2nd city. And this is the hub of transportation. O'Hare Airport was the busiest in the world for a long time. We were the #1 tourist city in the country. Recently we lost to Las Vegas the last couple of years. It has beat us in tourism. But once we get our casinos here back in shape, we'll probably recover. And I think Daley and the others really have sincere interest in making Chicago work. They want it to be, it's already a big center for architecture. We have museums, we have planetariums, we have places for Museum of Science and Industry, for example, is a worldwide leader. So we have a lot of attractions here, and we want our city to be a city of tourism, but also a city that works. There's a certain feeling, there's a certain spirit in Chicago that this city works.
Why should it be a city of tourism? Why shouldn't it be a city for the millions of people who live here?
Because tourists bring in money to support the people who live here. The hotel industry, I mean, people, when we have conventions here, like electrical workers, teachers, food manufacturers, they bring in 25,000, 50,000 people at a crack. The convention, these people use hotels, bars, restaurants, transportation, taxis, hotel rooms, you know, and that's part of our, and then allow for entertainment, shows, and so that's a very important part of our economy. Also the economy of other places in the world. But we want a city that also works for its citizens. So there's really decent garbage collection. They try to improve transportation. We're fighting now over how to expand our airport facilities. But it's a fight, whatever side you take, the purpose is to expand the city's capability to absorb tourism. And as a center People come here, land, take off for other places. This is a hub city for United Airlines, I think, and for other places. We're the home of United Airlines.
At this point in history, you see that as a bottom line? Tourism and transportation is...
No, I think quality of life is also something that people strive for in this city. Reasonably, Mayor Daley tried to bring in gondolas with singers. That's why I said we have very fine museums and planetariums and aquariums and people, theater. We have a lot of theater in this city. Maybe not as much as New York, but close. I think we have a lot of off-Broadway, not off-Broadway, but we like off-Broadway theater. A lot of community theater, a lot of attractions for the Ravinia and Grant Park, which do concerts every week.
So, in addition to the struggle to maintain Chicago's status as a world city, what do you see as the issues confronting the city itself? Nuclear city, not in terms of its world status, but in terms of the things going on a daily basis and quality of life and other issues.
Why don't you repeat the question?
What do you think are the most pressing issues facing Chicago as a community in terms of...
Well, crime, we have to resolve crime. There's still a lot of it in the city. And violence. Nobody's going to come here if it's a violent city. They're not going to go to neighborhood bars, neighborhood restaurants, if it's not safe to go there. I think in terms of things like sewage and garbage and all those kinds of things, this city is pretty well way ahead of many others. I know I visited New York. The garbage is thrown all over the place in New York. No, I mean here, you see $1 million homes with garbage all over the place in front. The garbage strikes. So this city handles all that stuff very well because we have different districts, sanitary commission and water commissions, park commissions. So I think that there's two things. One, we want this to be a very important cultural city in terms of the arts, in terms of opportunities, entertainment. We also want it to be a very industrial, commercial city, and that's why gambling is going to be here, along with a lot of other jobs. And one of the big things about Chicago is that there are a lot of jobs here, a lot of diverse industries here. So it's known to be, unlike Detroit, a one-horse market, cars, here everything is diverse. And so if something isn't working, something else is.
So there is a movement to introduce the whole gaming industry here right now, at this point in time?
Yeah. 10 years ago, the Chicago Crime Commission was out against, stood against any gambling in Chicago, stating that the mafia would come here, and a lot of other people said, what are they joking, the mafia lives here. This is the home of the mafia. And in fact, wherever the mafia lives, there's no crime. In their neighborhoods, there's no crime. And so now you had people fighting for casinos. Should it be in Chicago? Should it be near O'Hare Airport? Should it be in one of the other, Elgin or Joliet? The Democrats, Republicans are all fighting for gaming stuff because it's big business. I think last year the gross was $1 billion from gambling in all the casinos in Illinois. It's huge.
What do you think about that as a means for generating economic output in terms of the root, at the heart of what it is?
Not much. I personally don't gamble, but it's a gambling country, and it's something people like to do, and if they're going to do it, rather than some syndicate, which kills people getting the profits, the government might as well get it for schools and for everything else.
And encourage it.
All right. Anything more you want me to talk about today?
Is there anything else that you would like to talk about? No. Can I just ask you the last question? What are you passionate about? What's important to you in life?
I think saving the lives of our clients is one of the ever-pressing problems in my mind. We have 140 clients or so. I'm concerned about each one of them. Even though there are other lawyers, social workers, investigators on the cases, I'm still involved with most of them. And I talk to them on the phone all the time, and they're real people. So I worry about them. I don't want anybody killed.
You talk to them from jail?
They call all the time, and I talk to them every day, to many of them.
What kinds of things do they say to you in a telephone conversation?
They're concerned about their lawyers, about their cases, about conditions in the prison, all those things. They worry about medical problems. That's one thing. The other thing is that nationally I'm involved in the National Defender Movement to put public defender offices in every county in the country. In some areas there is no public defender. And they appoint private counsel who are basically civil lawyers who have no understanding of the criminal process. And therefore the defendant doesn't get, as smart as the lawyer might be, I mean, I couldn't really do a tax case right now, even though I studied in law school. But if the civil lawyers have been doing civil work all their lives, then they're not really conversant with the criminal law. Now, we utilize on our panel some civil lawyers, but we team them up with criminal lawyers and give them help. So I'm involved in going tomorrow to Texas. We're going to be involved in a movement to help set up a Texas public defender system. And last year I visited 3 different offices, one in New York State, one in Ohio, and one in California, and helped write reports as a team captain in each one. Helped write reports about how good their public defender system was, whether it met national standards or didn't meet national standards, etc.
Can you tell me your name and your position once more?
Yeah, my name is Marshall J. Hartman, and I'm the director of the Capital Litigation Division of the State Appellate Defender Office in Illinois.
Anything else that you want to say?
She doesn't say.
She's not through yet? She's not vented her spleen yet?
I think she vented her spleen. At the end of the whole thing, she says... Argument? I didn't know we were arguing about something. I thought you wanted to
tell her
start...
now we're going to put names on there, or no?
No, because I didn't want to even get into that with her. She was really being nasty. I said in the past, I said, when I have done this, when people have been incapacitated, I have put at the bottom that I assisted. And I said, I'm telling you, I didn't put my name on that as attorney or anything else because I'm not filing an appearance. I cannot file a pleading with my name on it. I said, look, you know, I can't help it. The statute needs to be rewritten. So we'll see what happens. She never asked who did it. So as far as, you know, I got to talk about that too, but Juliet wanted to essentially that either.
Just saying that it's really an exciting time in America, and I think it's interesting that you're doing this documentary. When my son was 17, he and I drove in a brand new Jeep all across the country, taking Route 66, which is somewhat non-existent, but we went off 55, following 66 wherever we could. That took us to Indian reservations, that took us to small towns, for example, one where there were only 10 people in it. When Route 66 went through that town, it was a bustling metropolis. Now that 55 had been built and 66 was mostly abandoned, 10 people lived in the town. And they had a post office, and they had a grocery store, and virtually the gift shop, and that's it. We interviewed some of the people who lived there. One person, who was a young girl, age 19, said she never left the town in her life.
What is the town?
What state? I don't know. It's somewhere along the Route 66 road from Chicago to California. I don't remember right now. But it was just very interesting to see that. And she'd gone to the local school. And, I mean, imagine growing up in a town of 10 people. I mean, she never left the town. Another place we went to was something like the Dewdrop Inn. And we had a book about Route 66 with a picture of that inn in the book and the proprietor standing by it. So we stopped there, we showed him his picture in the book. And he said, this is in Oklahoma or Texas, or some Shamrock, Texas, maybe. And so he was so excited, he cooked us a steak and personally, and he was very pleased to see we had the book with his picture in it. But anyway, we also stopped at Indian reservations, and it was very interesting to follow the route west. And for my son, who's then 17, to see the mountains and to see the vast expanse of America, which you really don't see from the air in 4 hours. Then back we took I-80 and stopped at places like Salt Lake City and visited the Mormon Temple, where one of my classmates was an elder of the Mormon Church. So when I told him that, they gave us a private tour of the facility. And then we visited Sin City in the north, Reno. It's kind of a contrast with Salt Lake City. And again, saw a lot of mountains and you know, steakhouses in different parts of the country. So that was a great adventure, and it gave my son the appreciation of America, which Chicago is one of the leading cities.